betrayed at the altar. Anne-Marie's story. It was supposed to be the happiest day of Anne-Marie's life, the day when vows of love would seal her future with Jonathan, the man she believed would stand by her through anything. The church was breathtakingly beautiful. White roses adorned the pews. Soft music played from the string quartet, and the air was thick with the buzz of anticipation. Anne-Marie stood in her bridal suite, looking ethereal in her ivory gown. Her long hair was styled in a soft chignon, her flawless face a mixture of nerves and quiet joy. She clutched the bouquet of roses, a symbol of her hopes for the day. But those hopes would soon shatter. The whispers started quietly at first, then grew into murmurs loud enough to pierce the heavy silence. A bridesmaid rushed in, her face pale, her voice trembling. "Anne-Marie, Jonathan, he's gone." Confusion rippled through Anne-Marie's heart. "Gone," she whispered, her voice a mere breath. Moments later, a note arrived, short, cruel, and heartless. "Anne-Marie, I can't marry you. Trisha has come back. My true love has returned, and I no longer need you as a poor substitute. I'm sorry." The words hit her like a physical blow. Jonathan, her Jonathan, had walked out of their wedding to be with Trisha, the woman he had once loved, but who had left him behind years ago. Anne-Marie sank into a chair as the world crumbled around her. Friends and family rushed to her side, but nothing could dull the sting of betrayal. The weeks that followed were a blur. Anne-Marie retreated from the public eye, the whispers and gossip following her like shadows. People pitied her, labeling her as the jilted bride. But what they didn't know was this: Anne-Marie was not a powerless woman. She was the sole heiress to the wealthiest family in the country. She had hidden her wealth because she wanted Jonathan to love her for herself, not for her fortune. For 3 years, she had lived humbly, silently supporting him and his ambitions. She had quietly funneled resources into his struggling company, turning it from near bankruptcy into one of the top 5 businesses in the city. And yet, he had left her believing she was nothing more than a poor substitute. It was in the depths of that heartbreak that Anne-Marie made a vow. "I gave him everything. He discarded me like I was nothing. I will return him and his company to where he started with nothing." Her family, who had watched her suffer in silence, rallied behind her. Anne-Marie, strengthened by their support, returned to her true self. No longer the meek woman in Jonathan's shadow, she emerged as the powerful and determined woman she had always been. Months turned into a year. Jonathan basked in the glow of his perfect reunion with Trisha, the woman who had once been his everything. For a while, he believed he had made the right choice. Trisha, beautiful and charming, seemed perfect on the surface. But cracks soon appeared. She was manipulative, careless with his business dealings, and demanding of his wealth. Jonathan's company, which had once thrived, began to spiral downward. Deals fell apart, employees left, and his competitors overtook him. Anne-Marie, meanwhile, had stepped into the spotlight. The once quiet heiress became a powerhouse in the business world. With her intelligence, resources, and strategic mind, she grew her family's empire further. The city buzzed with her name, and her success became the talk of the town. At first, Jonathan brushed off her rise, too proud to see the connection. But as his company faltered and Anne-Marie's influence grew, realization struck him like thunder. She had been the one supporting him all along. One evening, as Jonathan sat alone in his empty office, his world unraveling, the truth hit him with unbearable clarity. Trisha was gone. She had left him the moment his fortunes began to decline. Alone and broken, Jonathan finally saw what he had lost. He had thrown away a woman who had loved him unconditionally, a woman who had stood by him, silently sacrificing her own comfort for his success, and he had betrayed her for someone who only cared for his status. Overwhelmed with regret, Jonathan sought out Anne-Marie. He showed up at her company headquarters one afternoon, unannounced. She was in the middle of a meeting when he arrived, but when her assistant mentioned his name, Anne-Marie's expression didn't flicker. Jonathan found her in her elegant office, standing tall, exuding the quiet power that now defined her. For a moment, he couldn't speak. She was more radiant than he'd ever remembered. "Anne-Marie," he began, his voice heavy with regret. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I was blind. I know now what I've lost." Anne-Marie's gaze was steady, her expression unreadable. "Why are you here, Jonathan?" "To ask for a second chance," he admitted, desperation leaking into his tone. "I was a fool. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved." Anne-Marie tilted her head slightly, considering his words. Then she smiled a smile that was calm, kind, but firm. "You're wrong about one thing, Jonathan," she said softly. "You never truly loved me. You loved the version of me that served your needs. And I won't be that woman again." Jonathan's heart sank as the truth settled over him. She had moved on far beyond him. Anne-Marie stood, offering him a graceful nod. "Goodbye, Jonathan. I hope you find peace." With that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving him alone once again. Anne-Marie's life flourished. She traveled the world, built charities, and enjoyed the company of friends and loved ones who valued her for who she was. Jonathan's chapter in her story had closed, but her life continued to blossom. Years later, as she stood on the balcony of her family estate, overlooking a golden sunset, Anne-Marie felt nothing but peace. She had learned that real love didn't require her to diminish herself for someone else, and in letting go of Jonathan, she had found the greatest love of all: love for herself and the life she had built. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak leads us to the brightest beginnings. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak leads us to the brightest beginnings.